And welcome everybody to the Huddle. It is our streaming sports talk show. It's weekly, every Tuesday at this time. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Paris, almost as always, joined by Pat. And today, also you can see we are joined by KGUN 9 weekend news anchor Ryan Fish. Ryan, good afternoon. How are you today?
Thank you guys for having me. It's a good Tuesday, and hopefully me being here doesn't slow the operation down. Hopefully smoother than the Broncos last night. Hopefully we're just moving along at least a little better than that.
Great. Best defense in the NFL, and they're 2-4. How does that work, the Broncos?
Well,
ask Kyler Diggs, who's there in the studio with you, Ryan.
I just got done talking to Kyler about it. He's not too happy about it, as I could imagine.
So, Ryan, before we talk U of A football, we're going to start with that. What is your relation to U of A football head coach Jedd Fisch?
I wish I could have this really great story that I could really string people along for several minutes. Oh, yeah, Jedd and I, we go way back. He's actually my uncle or my third cousin or something like that, but our names aren't even spelled the same, so I can't really even do that. Just sound the same. So I can't even go by Fish. Sometimes I go by Fish with people, but I can't do that around the U of A or around the football team because everyone would just get confused.
Right. So for those who don't know, actually, Quasi grew up with Jedd Fisch. He is from Livingston, New Jersey. I'm from West Orange, which is the town right next door. And we went to the same religious school, and we were a year apart. His best friend, I played tennis with growing up, and his best friend's father was my periodontist growing up. And so when Jedd Fisch was hired, the name sounded familiar, but we don't, neither of us remember each other. So that's the extent of it. So yes, obviously, I knew you weren't related, but I wanted to ask.
It's a small world. That's even crazier than me having a similar last name.
You can be related. Maybe we can be related if he does a little better, or his defense maybe plays a little bit better. But Pat, right now, this U of A defense 2 weeks ago couldn't stop the run against Oregon. Last week couldn't stop the pass against Washington. And I know Jedd Fisch is talking about, hey, Oregon's doing that to everybody, Washington's doing that to everybody, but they don't have to do it at that level, and they don't have to have Washington setting school records for passing.
Well, and we started this 5-game stretch, guys. We talked about how difficult they were facing Oregon, Washington, USC, Utah, UCLA. We knew it was going to be a tough stretch, but we thought maybe they could steal one in there. And now looking at it 2 weeks in, we're looking at the wrong video here, but 2 weeks in to the University of Arizona, Power 5 teams that they're playing, as we see them here against Washington, this was probably their best opportunity. Now we'll see how it all plays out the next 3 weeks. It turns out this may have been their best opportunity. And they played a strong game offensively. In fact, it was their best offensive display against a team that was arguably better than them. But defensively, it's the same old woes. And unfortunately, I think that moving a couple of guys around, maybe trying to get them to, maybe focus on certain things versus the week before, it's just not working. So I think the only way that this is going to get better defensively for Arizona is the transfer portal and some recruits coming in next year.
Yeah, you try to look for things that you find in common with the 3 Pac-12 losses now. All of them, coincidentally, they gave up exactly 49 points. I don't know how much you could attain from that other than the defense has been not good. But
they've been consistent, Ryan.
It's been consistently not good.
That's right.
It was against Cal and Oregon. It was the running game where they really struggled. And obviously, this past weekend, it was the passing game. I think part of that, when you try to think about talent or where you need to improve, is the defensive front, because in all 3 of those games, they had 0 sacks. So if you're not getting any pressure on the quarterback, even if it's the run game that's hurting you, if you can't get penetration, you can't get the defensive line making an impact and trying to put pressure on the offense, and you're not getting there, the coverage is not going to be able to hang in there against Michael Penix for 6-7 seconds or whatever it ends up being. It's just no matter how good you have players in the secondary, if your linebackers and defensive front can't get pressure, it's going to be trouble.
To go along with what Pat said, Ryan, they're going to have to hold on for the rest of the year. But just in the way that Jedd Fisch in the last offseason attacked the transfer portal and attacked recruiting on offense with guys like Tataroa McMillan and Jacob Cowing and Tanner McLaughlin and players on offense, he is going to have to, DJ Williams, the running back, he is going to have to put that same energy and effort into the defense in the offseason. And he's not a defensive coach. He's an offensive coach, but he's got to be able to do that. Yes, they brought in Hunter Echols, and he's been good, especially earlier in the season on the defensive line, but they need 4 or 5 of those guys, and they've got to really attack that transfer portal and recruiting that much harder. Now, they did put in a couple of true freshmen this past week. Jacob Manu, who played at Servite High School with Noah Fafita and Teteroa McMillan, and the tight end, Kean Burnett. He was good. He had a 4th down stop. You look at him, he looks like he's a legitimate Power 5 player. Probably got overlooked maybe a touch because he's 5'11", and sometimes in recruiting, when you have that 5 next to you, it makes a big difference. But I think he could be a good player for them. I think that was a good move by Fish, but they need a lot more help on defense.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately, Jason. That's where I'm concerned, because you mentioned it. Jed Fish did an amazing job at recruiting offensively, and that's what he's known for, right? You come to me, I'm gonna coach you up. You're gonna have a chance to play in the NFL, and you look at the star power that he's got now on the offense, and it's working. Can he do that on the defense? That remains to be seen. He wasn't able to do quite at the level he did offensively. Wasn't able to do it defensively during the offseason. By the way, real quick shout out, T-Mac had a game. Obviously, he had an awesome game, and you see his development now. 6-7 games. He is looking like the guy we thought he could turn into. And Jacob Cowan continues, even though he was a little bit hobbled the other day, continues to be one of the top receivers in the nation. I've just looked it up. He's 7 touchdown catches, tied for 6th in the country, number 1 in the Pac-12. 761 receiving yards, tied for 6th alone in the nation, 1st in the Pac-12, and 7.6 reception per game, 4th in the country, 1st in the Pac-12. He is a pretty special player.
And you could even see it in the talent outside of those two, who are obviously grabbing the headlines, but you could just see it from the ridiculous catches that Dorian Singer's been making, and Tanner McLaughlin at the tight end position, even though their stats aren't as gaudy. I mean, these guys, you could tell, are just a step up in the talent level compared to what they've had in recent years. So it really is, we do have to give Arizona football kudos. We can't say at all this is the same team as last year. It is a noticeable improvement. Obviously, that just being on the offensive end is not enough to win against these elite Pac-12 teams, as we're seeing. So we just have to hope, in terms of them getting a win in this tough stretch, we have to hope that they do a lot with this bye week coming up. Maybe Johnny Nansen switches some strategies defensively. They've got to do something here to turn the tide. USC may not be the place to do it against. They came off a tough loss to Utah. They're probably going to be frustrated. They also, I believe, have a bye week. So that's going to be a really hard matchup. But if they want to get one of these upset wins in this really tough stretch, they've got to do something defensively. But we do have to recognize how much the offense has come forward this year.
It was a 5-game stretch. They're 2 games into it. It was going to be all 5 were going to be ranked teams. When Washington got upset against ASU, they're no longer the ranked, but 3 more ranked teams coming up here. Wally Wildcat says, finally got to see a game in person. Never realized how small our defensive line is. Is size part of the problem? Pat, when I read a comment like that, I think, well, the defensive line's no smaller than it's been ever in previous years. They got a couple of big guys there, Keon Bars and Paris Shan. Those guys aren't little guys. The secondary is not small. I mean, Jackson Turner's not a big guy. Jalen Harris isn't huge, but does he really have to be? As an edge rusher, you just want to get him to the quarterback. They've got a defensive back who's 6'4", who's a true freshman. He's going to work his way up. He's already up to 2nd on the depth chart. If feeds Ian's price stock, I don't know that size is like it's a definite issue. Oh, we just have to get bigger. That's the issue. I think it's a little bit of everything. Yeah, I'm sure it'd be great to get bigger, but they also got to get faster. They just got to be a lot better.
There are guys that can rush the passer that aren't as big as other guys. I mean, not everybody's JJ Watt or TJ Watt, obviously, but when you're like where my seats are, they're pretty low down to the field, and I can see a size difference, and you say, okay, well, Oregon's offensive line versus our defensive line. Oregon was bigger and obviously did the job against our defensive line, and vice versa. You say, okay, Oregon's defensive line was bigger than our offensive line. They put a lot of pressure on Delora. So size does matter to an extent, but not always. I think it's too easy just to say our size isn't there. I think it's talent, it's coaching, it's all of the above. Everything has to come together, and you can coach up guys, you can make them better that aren't necessarily the biggest guys, but at the same time, you got to recruit, and you're going up against teams that have 4-star, 5-star recruits across the board along their lines, and none of the guys that Arizona's lining up necessarily has a star next to him. So that's in the defensive side. That's the area to focus on.
Yeah, nothing much more to add. It's not just one issue here, like you said. It's a whole bunch of everything. I mean, we do want to give, like we gave a shout out to the office. We do want to give a shout out to Hunter Eccles, at least for making that impact early on in the season. He had that clutch, I believe, the strip sack in that North Dakota State game. I mean, it's not like the defensive line has been a total failure this year, but obviously its strategy needs to be changed. Something needs to be changed this year. You can't have 3 Pac-12 games with no sacks, and the QB hurry stat is a little bit of a nerdy stat, but that number has been basically 0 in those 3 games. They got to put more pressure on the quarterback
and remember guys, they went into the season saying we got to get more takeaways, right? And we saw those takeaways in those early non-conference. Where are the takeaway? The defense is not taking the football away again. It's the same thing we've seen, the last 5 years for Arizona football and defense. They're just not getting the takeaways in games where they, think about that. What if they get one more takeaway in that game? What if they get a takeaway against Washington? Maybe that changes the whole complexion of and they win that game.
They were only down by 3. They were only down by 3 in the fourth quarter.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Get one takeaway. Jed Fish was talking about that's why he tried the onside kick, right? He knew he had to steal a possession somewhere. Well, you steal a possession by creating a turnover. There's none of that right now.
And you saw ASU beat that Washington team, albeit they were at home. But I mean, a lot of people could argue this Arizona team's better than that ASU team in Tempe right now. And they were able to beat Washington, and that's in part because they were able to create that chaos and get some pressure on the quarterback, and that's the easiest way to potentially cause a fumble or an interception, a hurried throw. If you're not getting the pressure on the quarterback, it's going to be really tough to force a takeaway.
Yeah, tough to believe just a season ago that defense was keeping them in games sometimes. And it was the offense that was putrid. And this defense is just totally taking a total step back with yardage. Johnny Nance is going to get a second year for sure as a defensive coordinator next year. But like I said, they've got to attack that transfer portal and recruiting because the defense is taking a step back. And you know what? There's actually been times, Ryan, where they've rushed 7 or 8 guys and they still couldn't get to the quarterback. I mean, it's just not good. It's not good. So USC coming here in a couple of weeks, and they're going to have to play a lot better. All right, let's move on here to talk about the Phoenix Suns. And the reason why I wanted to bring up the Suns is because tonight, as we record this on Tuesday, it is opening night in the NBA. Suns aren't playing tonight. There's a couple of games, but I thought it'd be fun. We'd look at the over-under for wins. The Suns, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, they had 64 wins last year, was it?
64, which I believe was the franchise record last year.
So Vegas is saying here, they think 11 and a half fewer wins. They're only saying 52 and a half. Okay, so why do they say 52 and a half? And for those who don't know, that means you can bet more or less right now, beginning of the year, to win money. Okay, so why is Vegas saying 11 and a half fewer wins? Well, a couple of reasons why. One is nobody expects anybody to repeat 64 wins. That's a lot. That's an extreme. Everybody would take the under. They're trying to get even money, but trying to get an even amount of money on each side. But 11 and a half is a lot. Well, think about it here. There's a little dysfunction at the end of last year. You've got with Ayton and the coach. Chris Paul didn't look good at the end of the playoffs. He looked old. You've got a situation with Jay Crowder. So you've got some question marks going into the season. I tell you what, I'm actually going to take the under. I'm saying the Suns are going to win somewhere between 49 and 52 wins. I'm going to take the under. Ryan, start with you. Over or the under on the Suns' 52 and a half wins in the regular season, and why? And for those who don't know, they play 82 games in the regular season.
Yeah, well, when I take into account regression and everything else, natural regression, even if they didn't have the issues we saw last year, and then to see the issues that they had in the playoffs, the roster that they have, and kind of the lack of moves that really make a difference in the offseason, I'm kind of inclined to go exactly in your range. So my instinct is under here. I still think they're a good team. I think they'll get in the upper 40s. But I also think that the level of competition is just so tough across the entire league, especially in the West. I know that's more of an issue in the playoffs, not the regular season win total. I just think the West is loaded, and it's going to be hard for them to get close to 64. I would also go under and maybe pick closer to that 50 number.
I'm not just being a contrarian. I'm going to say 53. So I'm going to go just over, barely. And here's why. So
it's not The Price is Right.
Well, somebody's got to be, different.
No, I'm glad you have different.
And here's why. So 2 years ago, remember they won 51 games. They were actually second best in the West, and they made a deep playoff run, obviously. And then losing in the finals. Then last year they get 64 wins in the regular season, and their playoff run gets cut short. And Jason and I had some discussions about whether or not that last few weeks of the season when they started resting guys and if that and they lost their edge. That was my opinion. I think Jason didn't see it quite that way. But my point is, you'd like to see them win a lot of games, but you don't need to win 64 games. In my estimation, that's maybe what was a problem last year that made them look like they were kind of out of gas. So I look at 52.5 and say, why not? Let's go 53. Let's go a little bit better than they were 2 years ago when they made it to the finals and lost versus the 64 that they won last year.
It's tough because I really like Monty Williams. I think he's a great coach. I mean, that's not a hot take, obviously. He's well respected, and he's a tremendous coach. But there are just some lingering issues there where you can't really, they don't pass the vibe check, as a lot of people would, as the young folks would say. There's just some issues going on here with Chris Paul's age. The whole DeAndre Ayton thing is probably the biggest deal, where they match the offer sheet. He's almost out the door to Indiana. Now he's back. They ask him, hey, you excited to be here? And he could not seem less excited to be back with the team. I don't know if that'll manifest itself on the court. He's a great player. But there just seem to be some lingering issues. There's the Jay Crowder thing where he wants out. He's probably not going to play for the team. They're working to trade him. They lost to an overseas Australian team during the preseason by a sizable margin. I know it's the preseason. I
agree with you, Ryan.
There are warning signs here.
All.
There are a lot of red flags. And if it was just one or two of these things, I think it would be kind of overblown. But there's many tiny red flags before they've even played a game this year. And that's not even taking into account players like Chris Paul you need a bounce back year from, or his health, or Devin Booker's health, things like that, it's a little bit concerning. And in terms of beyond Ayton, they lost JaVale McGee, who was a very serviceable backup center last year. He's no longer there. They have Bismack Biyombo, who came in and was pretty good in his limited minutes, but are you going to really rely on him to be the backup center? What happens if Ayton it doesn't play well? Do you trade him in the middle of the year? There's just too many wild cards for this team for me to feel confident about them being good.
Pat, this is why we brought Brian in. He knows his stuff.
He does know his stuff. I will agree about Monty Williams, but I'll say that's why Monty Williams will earn the money that Monty Williams gets paid. It's going to be imperative that he has open communication with DeAndre Ayton, and he has, obviously he'll have Booker and he'll have Chris Paul, on his side, because they just love the man. I think that it's imperative for that, that kind of quartet of the 3-star players and Monty Williams to kind of, really gel together and really find a way to work in all these other parts that we've seen be so key in the last couple of years. And I think you're right. There are some warning signs, but also I have a lot of confidence in Monty Williams.
They still have time to do it. I think he can. I would love to see him bring this thing together, for them to defy the experts who think they're going to really fall off. I would love to see them have a resurgent year and come back from that playoff loss. Just from what we've seen so far, I can't bet on that, because even at media day, they asked Ayton and Williams about that whole thing at the end of the playoffs, about him getting benched, and both of them were like, oh, we didn't talk about it. I haven't talked to him at all. So it's just, a little concerning for now.
Wouldn't be surprised to see a slow start and then they pick it up. And of course, a lot depends upon injuries too. Yes. Booker's been hurt in his career. You don't know what's going to happen there. So I'm also taking that into consideration too. When I go the under, I'm thinking maybe a little bit of a slow start. Booker gets hurt for a little bit. Okay, here we go. I want to finish it off with the final minutes we have here with a little bit of soccer. A small but very passionate, certainly soccer fan base in Tucson. We have some news today with FC Tucson. It's our minor league soccer team here. The last couple of years, they've been a USL League One team. So that's two under MLS. Goes MLS, USL Championship, which is Phoenix Rising FC. And then they've been USL League One the last few years. They're going to go back to being a USL League Two, previously called Premier Development League team, which is instead of a professional team, they're going to be more of a summer college team where, they don't have to pay the players and they don't have to do this, ridiculous travel. They're going all over the country, Chattanooga, South Georgia, all that. And it's kind of an interesting story here. John Perlman is the founder of the team. He's been head coach the last couple of years. And what I thought was interesting today is he's actually going to try to go back into a professional league and make them a professional team again. I'm not so sure that's the best idea. Let's take it one step at a time. But big news today here, Pat. We'll start with you with our soccer team here in Tucson.
Well, the scary part is they consider this pre-professional, Jason, and that's a term that's a little bit troublesome to me.
Why?
You go from a professional league to a pre-professional league.
No, it's not troublesome. That's summer league.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But when you have a professional soccer team in your town, you want to see that team advance and do well. You don't want to see them have to take a step back. And that's what they're doing. They're taking a step back to this League Two, which is fine if, and the quote from Perlman is, feel the League Two with the intent of returning to the club to the professional ranks in the near future. So I'm all for it if it works out, but I think you have to get this team back to that league, the League One, instead of League Two,
I don't
as
think
quickly
so.
as you can. If it works out to get the players, you're going to get players that are quality. You're going to get more interest in the product.
We haven't, Pat. We haven't seen that. They were very successful as a Premier Development League team.
Correct.
Yeah,
which enabled them to move up to the professional team, which got more interest, which gave them a little more cash.
Why do you think? I don't think it got more interest. In fact, there was an actual backlash because what happened was you had Phoenix Rising owning the team,
but that was the problem. That was the problem.
But even
that was the backlash. It wasn't going to professional.
This past year when they weren't part of Phoenix Rising FC and they were just their own team where you could have players move up and down without Phoenix Rising FC. It's not like attendance was gangbusters. I think they're better off with a model of being the Premier Development League team. You get to see good college players and the team can be financially viable. You're not flying all over the country and paying salaries that you can't afford. They only get 1,000 fans, 1,500 fans a game.
Even John Perlman knows you have to go back to one. You can't stay at two. It says so right here in the release, and I believe that wholeheartedly that this team needs to be playing in League One, level one, in order to attract better players. So you got a better product in the field. If you got a better product in the field, you promote it right, you're going to have people come out.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't part of this the news that we got today? They're going to try to get back to that professional level, but it's contingent on a stadium deal.
That's right.
In town. So that adds another level of complication there.
They just renovated stadium a few years ago. I was a little surprised by that. I don't think the stadium is the issue.
But the fact that that's in there seems suggest to me that's necessary to get back.
People don't love going to that area of town.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
There's nothing wrong with that area of town. And parking, there's tremendous, well, at least for the baseball field, there's better parking. Parking's not as good for soccer. But what are you going to play in the middle of downtown, Pat?
Well, my question is, what's the stadium going to look like? How are they going to pay for that? Where's that going to be?
That all has to be figured out. But Jason, this is exactly why we had problems with a AAA team here when they moved it down there. People didn't want to go that far down to the southwest side of town. They don't want to go all the way down to watch it. Why do you think the U of A does so well at High Corbett? Why do you think High Corbett did so well? It's right in the center of town. I don't know what the answer is, but clearly they have a vision that includes a new stadium somewhere in town that's more accessible to everyone in the city of Tucson. And they think that's the revenue stream they're going to need. Right now, a deal with the county isn't obviously working financially for them at that tier 1 level. So they want to pursue an area where they can get maybe a stadium deal that's very favorable for them, where they can maybe generate some more revenue and move back to tier 1.
It's not an excuse, but just another factor that didn't help them this year is I believe they had multiple monsoon lightning delays and weather issues, just because that's the season when you play here, and they happen to be playing at night when those storms came through, and a lot of fans would go to these games and then not even be able to stay to the end.
They did win
a
couple of those games though, after the rain delays and the lightning delays.
They did, but Ryan, we're not going to build a $1 billion indoor outdoor.
I am not suggesting a dome stadium. No.
That can be moved in up and down. What's the word I'm looking for?
I'm saying Mother Nature and luck itself also wasn't on their side this year. But I mean,
Sure.
They didn't just make this decision lightly. I'm assuming.
No. It's announced today as we're taping this 2 days after the season ends, but I'm sure this was in the work for a few months. Yeah.
I think Tucson can be that market that can have even better fan support for a professional product or League One product. I don't know if the stadium's the only barrier there. I think they can get there. It's just going to be a crucial couple of years now, trying to keep the fans that are there and continue to build it, when you're also admitting, hey, we're taking a step back and the level of play you're going to be seeing here. But I think they can do it.
Let's pop up Alex Steininger, who's our most loyal viewer of the Huddle, that he actually tried out with Perlman and tried to make the team in the early 2000s, rolled his ankle in the first 5 minutes and didn't make the team. And I'm sure that's it. If he wouldn't have rolled his ankle, I'm sure that Alex Steininger would have made
We wouldn't know him. We'd know him as an athlete.
Alex, if you were eating the TB12 way, like your favorite football player, you wouldn't be getting hurt.
TB12's not doing so well this year.
If you were training and eating,
he's got to get back to the basics.
Well, Alex Steininger is our host of the Morning Blend and a loyal viewer of the
Do you think Alex yells at the control room like Tom Brady yelled at
the offensive line if
things don't go well? I don't think Alex does. He doesn't yell at anybody.
All right, so we got to wrap this up here because for a couple of reasons, we're at the bottom of the hour here, and the studio in which Ryan is in is our main studio, and in our 4:00 news on KGUN 9, Faith Abercrombie, one of our news reporters, is going to be making her weather debut, and she needs to practice during the next half hour.
True. Though some newsroom roster moves, at least for the day, maybe it's Kyler now. So TBD, they do need it. They do need it soon. Either way.
Well, we'll see if there's a substitution in there.
Yeah, substitution, exactly.
Right. Hey, Ryan, great job. I mean, you're real prepared. You know your stuff. So I know, the reason why Brian's not on a lot is because Tuesday's an off day for him. But when we can get him on, we'll have him on. So great job, Ryan. It was great having you here on the Huddle. Thanks for doing it. And Pat, we'll be back here next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Thanks, Jason. Terrific job, Ryan.
Thank you both. Thank you both. See you next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday at this time here on the Huddle.